Good evening and welcome to a conversation about Ballets Russes with the Louisville Ballet. I'm Abby Shue, Deputy Director of External Relations and Advancement at the Speed Art Museum, and also a ballerina in a former life. And so I'm so delighted to be here in conversation tonight with Andy and Robert. At the Speed, we're very excited about an exhibit that we opened last month called Isabelle de Borchgrave, Fashioning Art from Paper. In this exhibit, Belgian artist Isabelle de Borchgrave creates elaborate dresses and gowns and costumes and sculptures, all from paper. And an entire section of the exhibit is dedicated to costumes from the Ballets Russes. Really a company that's regarded as the most influential ballet company of the 20th century, and for which we know ballet in America has changed entirely from their influence. And so with me tonight, we have Louisville Ballet's artistic director, Robert Curran, and also resident choreographer, Andy Schermoly. And I'm so excited to have them both here. And I'm going to turn it to them to briefly introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Robert Curran, artistic director, Louisville Ballet. Really happy to be joining you all. And I have been saying since I saw the exhibit, my head literally popped off when I saw the Ballets Russes section. It was so inspiring. It's such an important company to me, and I'm so glad to be here talking about it with you all.
Hi, I'm Andy Schermoly. I'm living in Louisville now, resident choreographer with Louisville Ballet, and I've yet to see the exhibit, but have heard a lot about it. And I'm sure it's incredible, as the Ballets Russes was incredible and influential, and just excited to talk about it.
Well, great. Thank you all both for being here. We'll get started with a little bit of background about the Ballets Russes in general and why was this company so important and so influential. And then we'll move from there to talk about work that Louisville Ballet is doing today and how a lot of that creative process is actually rooted in and inspired by the Ballets Russes. So Andy, I'll start with you. Would you mind telling me a little bit about, why the Ballets Russes is regarded as one of the most influential ballet companies of all time?
I think because it was a groundbreaker in terms of collaboration between choreographers, costume designers, and musicians, and it toured. It was one of the few companies that was a Russian entity that became a Parisian entity, and Diaghilev was really a visionary in terms of combining classic and modern and making dance very accessible to, I think, the general public. Really, it became more of a commercial entity because he was just clever and groundbreaking in the way he would expose artists.
Absolutely. And Robert, feel free to add anything to that as well.
Yeah, I think the collaborations between the choreographers and the composers and the costume designers and the visual arts world, the fact that Diaghilev brought together Stravinsky, Debussy, Satie, Nijinsky, Massin, Fokine, Picasso, Matisse, Goncharova, these amazing artists to collaborate together, and he would sometimes quite literally lock them in a room and say, don't come out until you've got something that I'm happy to put on stage with the Ballets Russes. And they would get in there and do some really exciting, groundbreaking stuff.
That's so great. Well, and I know, Robert, the Ballets Russes also was influential in your career, both as a dancer, but also now as an artistic director, and would love for you to share more about roots in Australia and now in Louisville too.
Yeah, so as Andy mentioned, the Ballets Russes was a touring company. Primarily, they were based in Paris, but they toured a lot. And in the 30s, they toured to Australia. And a lot of the ballerinas that were dancing with the Ballets Russes, ballerinas like Irina Baronova and Ballerina Tweedy, they all decided to settle in Australia. And they started their ballet schools. Their ballet schools kind of grew into civic companies, and the Australian ballet was birthed through that process. So there wouldn't really be an Australian ballet as it exists right now if it wasn't for the tours that the Ballets Russes took to Australia in the 30s. And so my career would not be what it was as a dancer. And the Australian ballet honored that that history in a 4-year program when I was a principal with the company. So we did 4 years worth of programming honoring the 100th anniversary of the formation of the Ballet Russe. And I got to work and collaborate with choreographers from all over the world on new works, brand new works, also on reimaginings of some of the Ballet Russe original works, reimaginings of those, and a lot of seminars and symposiums that really dug into the importance of the company and how they worked. And so it has a really special place in my heart. And as a dancer, I got to experience what it felt like to be in that kind of collaborative environment. And when I transitioned into my leadership role, I was able to carry that forward and really spearhead collaborations. And, indeed, when I came to Louisville, that was one of the things that I really tried to start out strong, is collaborating with the visual art community in Louisville and the music community and the design community and the spoken word community, trying to perpetuate that great sense of collaboration that the Ballet Russe was renowned for. And actually, in terms of a Louisville connection, Louisville Ballet was formed in 1952. We're going into our 70th anniversary next season. And just 3 years after the ballet company was formed as a civic company, Alexandra Danilova came to Louisville to work with the company, to dance with the company, to coach the company. And shortly after that, Mia Slavenka, also from Ballet Russe, both of them from Ballet Russe, had an impact in the very early years of Louisville Ballet. So another example of the wide-reaching impact that the Ballet Russe had.
It's really incredible. Yeah, it seems like there can be kind of traces all over the ballet world to the Ballet Russe and the impacts that it's had. So I'm actually going to share my screen for folks who might not have seen the exhibit yet and show you all some pictures of some of the pieces that are in the exhibit. And so right now you can see 2 of the images of the Firebird costumes that are on display in the Isabelle de Borchgrave exhibit. And Robert, I know that, speaking of collaborations, you recently reimagined Firebird for Louisville Ballet, and would love if you could tell us more about how you approached that, and maybe whether the costumes on the stage at Louisville Ballet looked in any way similar to these paper costumes in the Isabelle exhibit.
Yeah, Louisville Ballet has embarked on a long-term project, actually, to have our resident choreographers create new imaginings of the 3 great Stravinsky ballets, Petrushka, Firebird, and the Rite of Spring. And Firebird was one of the commissions from Lucas Jervis, our resident choreographer, one of our resident choreographers. And that premiered in 2018, in the fall of 2018. And Lucas, as did Adam Hoagland with Petrushka, and we'll soon hear from Andy about the Rite of Spring, really departed from the original narrative, but dug deep into the essence of what those stories were about. Some of them, actually all of them, based in Russian folkloric stories. And Lucas decided to reimagine his Firebird in the context of a refugee crisis.
Wow.
And so the setting was very, very simple, stark setting, a kind of enormous ramp in one corner of the stage and a really beautifully designed lighting rig. And the dancers were actually in street clothes. So their costumes in no way resemble these designs that were recreated in this exhibit. Here we kind of have the hero and the villain in these 2 costumes. And in the Louisville Ballet reimagining of Firebird, there wasn't really a character that was the villain. The situation was the struggle. The situation was the villain. And actually, in a great collaboration with our Louisville Ballet School, it was the children the refugee community that were the Firebirds. He positioned them as the saviors of the refugees, bringing them into the next generation, carrying them forward. So there still is this essence of a journey and salvation, of being liberated, but in a very, very different context.
Wow, absolutely. What a fascinating interpretation and way to sort of modernize the story. And speaking of your kind of 3 Stravinsky works that the company has taken on, I would love, Andy, if you could tell us a little bit more about the approach that you're taking to the Rite of Spring. And I know you all are just wrapping up recording of that and soon to have single tickets on sale. So I hope that people will join us in watching that. Here are a couple of really exciting images. But tell us a little bit more about how you've approached this.
Okay. This is so nice to see. Some of those stills I haven't seen, actually. Sam has done some beautiful things. So the dancer is quite literally just wrapped. I'm sitting in our company manager's office, just having come from the studio. And just so proud of everyone, first of all. But so the concept behind this started quite a while ago. The set design is by my brother, Joe Schermoly. And conceptually, I also took a modern take on it, and having gone through this year of pandemic, found a through line with the story that we've all been living with and identifying with. We had to have worn masks in rehearsals. We did wear masks in rehearsals. And with the strict COVID protocol that we've had, I guess over time, I married the story that I originally had with the story that was going on in our lives. So there is a sickness abound in this Rite of Spring, and we're kind of on a I want to say a chase or a search to find out who hasn't made it through what is a post-apocalyptic world. And our dancers are celebrating a rescue mission that is going to pick them up from their planet, as their planet has not survived the nature and the way of their being. And so they've been stranded and actually living in a bunker underneath the earth for a long time. And they're now being picked up, but upon being picked up, and having their own strict protocol over the years with sickness, it's clear to our queen, Leanne, that someone is not well and can't be rescued because it'll be of detriment to the tribe. So the chosen one is somebody who's unwell, and sort of straying from the idea that maybe we were suffering or sacrificing somebody for the gods for a Rite of Spring. It's more that we're abandoning somebody for the Rite of Spring, for the continuation of their race. And I thought it's, I guess, different to the original story in a little way, but also, I hope, in a way, being so sad that it gives us hope that we don't abandon people, especially in this time of what we've been going through, that we don't do that, because it's heartbreaking. And the more we've gone through this process in the studio, the more heartbreaking it's become, actually. So it's been nice to live this with everyone, and the world has been very immersive. The costumes have been, I want to say, I haven't designed them per se, I've chosen them, and then sought them out through different venues and people that have created the actual materials. But I wanted it to look as weird and distant as possible, and yet relative.
Wow, I can't wait to see it. It looks really, really interesting. And I love kind of the pandemic angle on the story that you've taken. And I know we're all grateful to be seeing a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel and a little bit of kind of forward progress. And I know you all are talking about a return to the stages next season, which is really exciting for all of us, and hopefully, yes, exactly, and for the dancers as well. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. But speaking of wearing strange things when you dance, I obviously went through this exhibit and thought there's something ironic about these very elaborate, very beautiful paper costumes that, of course, if you danced in them, would immediately be torn to shreds. And wonder, are there ever paper costumes in ballet? Have you all ever seen that? Have you all ever danced in paper costumes? And what's it like? Does it work?
I have seen paper costumes. I've never performed in a paper costume. I do think it brings up a whole lot of logistical challenges, obviously. Very hot and sweaty, and that paper is not going to last for very long. But I also kind of like the idea of the sound that you could, you can use the movement when you can be in a paper costume. But I've seen a ballet where the dancers were paper, they were actually paper cutouts. So
funny.
In a row, and it was just a big paper cutout, and they would just cut out two sides of the paper, giant sheets of paper. They just had loads and loads and loads of them, and they would just literally staple them together, the two pieces, and the dancers would get it.
That's amazing.
Staple them into them, and they'd go out and they'd do their thing, and then they'd go in the trash or in the recycling, and then the next night it would be a brand new.
Quite labor-intensive costume design.
Yeah. But that's my only experience, I believe, of paper costumes. I mean, there's paper involved in a lot of costumes. Our Coppelia that we did, in 2015, had enormous masks, numbers of masks, and they were all paper mache masks. So it's used, but I haven't seen very many.
Sure.
Being paper.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you both, Robert and Andy, for joining us and providing so much insight about the Ballets Russes and about the exciting work happening at Louisville Ballet. And I know we'll include information about tickets for Rite of Spring, and hope that you all will tune into that virtual performance. And if you've not already, I hope that you all will all visit Isabelle de Borchgrave Fashioning Art from Paper at this speed. It's with us through August 22nd, so there's plenty of time, and we hope that we'll see you at the speed soon. Thank you both.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.